Okay, so I had an opportunity to race my Kyosho Lazer ZX6 again on astroturf. This video regards the setup changes I've made since the first time I ran. So this is for my second race day on an astroturf surface. The first time I went out there, I basically just took the laser that I had and tried to set it up as best as I could for astroturf. So it was basically, my dirt car. I had ball diffs. I had this straight rear arms. I had my standard sway bars, nothing super special. And I tried to drop the ride height as low as I could and increase the roll center as much as I reasonably could. And the car felt okay, but it was nowhere near competitive enough to really be able to push the car like the other guys were. So since then, I did the rear going arm conversion, and I also picked up the thick sway bar set for the laser. So I'm running a 2mm sway bar up front, and I think I have the 1.9mm sway bar in the rear. And you can see the nice going arms there. Now, the going arms, what they allow you to do is basically drop the nominal ride height. So if you have a particular shock length and you run it on a straight arm or a going arm, the going arm, it will drop the rear ride height. And the reason for that is because the shock itself is mounting somewhere around here, still on the flat part of the arm. But then the arm kicks up, and what that basically means is it takes everything with it, the hub carriers, all this stuff, it moves it all up. And if it's moving that hub carrier up, that means the chassis bottom relative to the hub carrier is dropping. And that allows you to drop the ride height. So the only way with a flat arm for me to be able to get to something like a 19mm rear ride height will be to put a huge amount of down travel limiters inside the rear shocks. But with the going arms, I can take all of those down travel limiters out and actually run a little bit of preload and still get to something like 16 or so millimeters. It's actually not that difficult. So it makes a huge difference in how low you can set the ride height. It may also make some difference in the actual suspension geometry. I haven't thought about it too much, so I won't get into that. But that's really it. The going arms and the front and rear sway bars. I dropped the ride height to around 16 or so millimeters, and that made a world of a difference. Now I can push the car a lot harder into corners. It feels better. So what that ended up meaning is I could start experimenting more with different tires. So the first time that I ran, I was running Schumacher mini pins in the rear and stagger rib tires up front. And these stagger ribs, I think they're the standard stagger rib tires. And these were a super soft compound, so they wore really fast. And by the end of the day, the car was pushing a lot. So even though you still see some tread here, this tire is basically done. I got to rip the tire off, take the inserts out, and recycle these rims. Same thing with these mini pins, right? The mini pins wear pretty fast. Even though this is a yellow compound mini pin, it's kind of their medium compound. After a day, they were just blasted. So what I ended up doing is, the first time I ran, I got these guys I don't know the name of these treads, but it's a Schumacher tread, and it's a very blocky tread. So going from the mini pin to this tread alone made a big difference in helping the car slide more. So you could push it a little harder into corners and not worry about traction rolling. This tire is really good for that. The problem is sometimes the car gets a little bit too loose. So for me, I need something that's kind of in the middle. And I eventually settled on these tires. They look a lot like the J-Concepts Loch Ness. This is the Schumacher Mini Spike. Basically the same tread as the Loch Ness, except it doesn't have the little bars going down the center of the tire. It's about the same tread depth, about the same pin density. This is quite good. I run a closed cell insert here, and on the front I'm running a wide stagger rib tread with closed cells up front. The stagger ribs give me the most steering compared to any of the other tires I've tried. I have tried the front mini spike tires. These actually have, this is an open cell foam. This is good maybe for practice. The car definitely pushes more with this tire than it does with the wide stagger rib tire. I can take corners a lot more sharply with the wide stagger rib tire than I can with the mini spike. Some of that may be due to the tread itself. Some of it may be due to this particular mount that I have using open cell inserts. I'd say this is a decent tire, maybe if you're running on a track with wider, more sweeping turns, then this tire is probably the better tire to go. But the track that I run at has much sharper turns, so this wide stagger rib is the way to go. So, I'll keep this around for, say, practice, so that I'm not beating this tire up during practice sessions. But it is a big difference in how the car handles between this tire and this tire. So what was actually happening is I was practicing with this setup here with the wide stagger ribs and the mini spikes, and I noticed the tread was starting to wear. So then I, put these aside and finished practicing with this combination, these blocks here with these mini spikes, and the car behaved very differently, right? It was sliding a little more and it was pushing. So then I got used to this by the end of practice, and then when I went to qualifying, I went back to this setup, and I couldn't put in a nice clean run because it was such a big change in how the car was driving. So I got used to these tires, and then I got used to these, and then I had to get used to these all over again. So, these relatively minor changes in the tires make an enormous difference in how the car behaves on an AstroTurf track. The first time I went out with this car, I did also try mini pins up front, but these mini pins give you so much steering, it's ridiculous. I was traction rolling everywhere. I had to take out, 3 pins on the inside and on the outside, and I still had way too much cornering. And even with this car set up as it is, with the low ride height, the thicker sway bars, and this specific tire here with all these pins cut out, it was still traction rolling. So basically, I'm going to toss this tire, try to recycle the rims. This is worthless to me. I have no use for it. So, if you're running on the type of track that I'm running on, if you go take a look at my running videos with, the size of the track, the types of layouts, the types of turns, this wide stagger rib, for me at least, is the way to go with this car. I still need to spend time, really learning how to push the car on AstroTurf in the same way that I can push my car on dirt. That just takes practice. A friend of mine has an X-Ray XB4, and he's just wicked fast with his car. I can't really keep up with him. 1 or 2 laps I can keep pace with him, but not over an entire run. That's just a matter of, practicing more on that surface. But overall, this car is not bad. I did have some of the same problems with negotiating some of the features as I did with my RZ6. Namely, there's a little roller around 1 or 2 of the hairpins that the uptake on the roller is pretty sharp, and the curvature on the roller is also pretty sharp. So you can hit the nose on the uptake, or if you take it a little too fast, it'll throw you off of the roller, wide out of the turn. And it's hard to take that with a low ride height. So if I set the ride height high, it's no problem. But then, the car will roll too much and I'll traction roll. So that's something I have to figure out. The other problem I actually ran into with this car is that I was doing stoppies. And I think that has to do with the fact that this particular setup I'm using has the motor towards the front of the car. So I get plenty of steering, but what also happens is if I hit the brakes hard, the rear is going to kick up. I can actually flip over, on an approach to a turn. So that has happened to me, this past weekend, and that was a problem. So I have to figure out how to deal with that. Maybe, stiffen up the front a little bit, add some pack, use thicker oil. That'll probably help. I'm already running 45 weight oil and the stiffest springs I can find up front, though. So I have to figure out some other way to deal with it. Overall, would I recommend a Lazer for an AstroTurf track? I don't know. I mean, I'm running it because it's what I have, and I really don't want to spend, extra money on yet another 4-wheel drive car. I have plenty of 4-wheel drive cars already. The X-Ray XB4, hands down, would be the best car to run right now. We'll see what happens when Team Associated comes out with their new 4-wheel drive buggy. Some people are saying it'll be much like the X-Ray chassis, in which case that would be another go-to car. The Lazer is good. You can obviously make it work well, but it's not really meant for AstroTurf. It's meant to be a dirt car. So, I'm going to stick with this for now because I love this car. It's a great car, and I'm just going to make it work. But if you're starting fresh coming into AstroTurf with four-wheel drive buggy, the X-Ray is probably your best bet. Yeah, so I guess that's it for now. Thanks for watching.